The Thursday morning arrived with that scent of rain that hadn't yet fallen, mixed with the aroma of coffee coming from Mr. Frank's bakery. Emma woke up before her alarm clock, as she always did when she had something special ahead of her. At 8 years old, she had already learned that the best moments in life happened when nobody was looking, when the world was still asleep, and she could be exactly who she wanted to be. Grandma Eleanor was snoring softly in the next room, and Emma knew she had at least an hour before her grandmother woke up. She put on her pink flip-flops, the ones that were getting too small but that she refused to replace, and tied a yellow ribbon in her curly hair. The little toy guitar was waiting for her in the corner of the room, leaning against the wall like a faithful friend. The apartment in the upper part of Denver offered a privileged view of the city stretching below, with its winding streets and houses stacked next to each other, like misaligned teeth. But what most caught Emma's attention was always that tall and illuminated building of St. Mary's Hospital, which seemed to never completely sleep. Even in the early hours, there were always windows lit, as if they were lighthouses guiding, lost navigators in the dark. Grandma Eleanor used to say that Emma's mother had the gift of singing to calm hearts, and that a well-sung song could enter places that even medicine couldn't reach. It was this heritage that made Emma believe that her voice, small and still unsure, could make a difference in someone's life. That morning, she descended the building stairs with extra care, holding the guitar as if it were a treasure. The doorman, Mr. Joe, had not yet arrived, and the street was almost empty, with only a few hurried workers walking toward the bus stop. Emma ran across the street, feeling her heart race with the adventure she was about to experience. Zaranti. Mary's Hospital was even more imposing up close. The white walls and mirrored glass gave the impression that the building touched the clouds. Emma went around the building until she found a side door that was always ajar for employees to pass through. She took a deep breath and entered, trying to look like she belonged there. The elevator took her to the 4th floor, where Grandma Eleanor had once mentioned that the most delicate patients stayed, those who needed special care. The corridor seemed endless, with a floor so shiny that it reflected the ceiling lights. Emma walked slowly, observing the numbered doors until one of them, half open, caught her attention. Inside the room, a man with graying hair was sleeping deeply, surrounded by machines that blinked colored lights and emitted low, rhythmic sounds. Emma had never seen so many wires and devices, but she didn't feel afraid. On the contrary, something inside her whispered that this man needed her song. Henry Anderson, a name she didn't yet know, had been one of the most important figures in the business scene of Colorado. His enterprises generated thousands of jobs, and his name frequently appeared in economic newspapers. But there in that hospital room, he was just a frail man, fighting against something that not all his money could defeat. Emma approached slowly, placed the little guitar on her lap, and settled into a chair next to the bed. She closed her eyes and began to sing the song that Grandma Eleanor always sang to her before sleeping. Smile, even if everything seems sad, smile, because smiles make flowers bloom even in sleeping hearts. Her childish voice, sweet and crystalline, filled the silence of the room. Outside, leaning against the doorframe, Luke Anderson observed the scene with a mixture of surprise and emotion. He had arrived early at the hospital that morning, something rare for him, who always preferred to resolve matters related to his father by phone. Seeing the man he admired so much attached to machines and wires left him deeply disturbed. Luke was a successful businessman who had inherited from his father not only the talent for entrepreneurship, but also the toughness necessary to survive in the corporate world. At 35, he commanded part of the empire built by Henry, but had always maintained an emotional distance from his father, as if feelings were a weakness he couldn't allow himself. But at that moment, hearing the angelic voice of the girl, something inside him broke. Childhood memories returned like waves, his mother singing to him in a hammock in his grandmother's backyard, before they moved to the city in search of better opportunities. It was a time when hugs were still possible, before business engulfed all the family's tenderness. Emma finished the song, opened her eyes, and adjusted the toy guitar. She whispered a "Get well, sir," that only the walls heard, and left the room with her heart beating strongly and a sense of accomplished mission. In her haste, she forgot the flower. Headbands she used to decorate her hair which remained on the chair as proof of her passage. Luke entered the room soon after, found the headband, and held it for a long time, feeling a tightness in his chest that he couldn't name. For the first time in years, he sat beside his father, took his cold and heavy hand and remained silent. He said nothing, but something inside him had transformed, as if that music had cracked the wall he had built around his heart. Henry, even unconscious, seemed to have noticed something different. His vital signs, monitored by the machines, showed a slight alteration, almost imperceptible but not unnoticed by the sensitive equipment. A finger moved, just a subtle movement, but it was registered by the sensors. Emma arrived home before Grandma Eleanor woke up, but couldn't disguise the sparkle in her eyes. Her grandmother, experienced in reading children's expressions, immediately realized that something had happened. After much insistence, she got her granddaughter to confess. The little adventure. Child, you can't go out alone like that, especially to a hospital. Grandma Eleanor reprimanded, but her voice carried more concern than anger. What if someone discovers? What if something happens? Emma cried softly, promised she wouldn't go anymore, but began to look at the hospital from the window every night, like someone talking to a distant star. Grandma Eleanor, observing her granddaughter's sadness, began to question if she had been too harsh. After all, she knew the power of music, and knew that the girl had inherited a special gift. That night, while Emma slept, her grandmother approached the window and also looked at St. Mary's Hospital. The lights blinking in the windows seemed brighter, as if they were waving to her. Grandma Eleanor sighed and whispered a prayer, asking for guidance on what to do with such a delicate situation. At the hospital, Luke remained longer than usual beside his father. He kept the flower headband in his jacket pocket, as if it were a charm, and for the first time in years he spoke to Henry as if he could hear. He told him about the business, about the city, about the simple things he had forgotten to share during all those years of distance. And so, without anyone knowing exactly how, a small seed of hope had been planted in that hospital room, watered by the sweet voice of a girl who believed in the power of music to heal sleeping hearts. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. 3 days passed since Emma promised her grandmother she wouldn't return to the hospital. 3 long days, where each look out the window seemed like a silent farewell. The girl tried to occupy herself with other activities, helping Grandma Eleanor in the kitchen, drawing in her notebooks, playing with the dolls she had received on her last birthday, but nothing could fill the emptiness she felt in her chest. Sunday morning, as they were getting ready for the 9 o'clock service at Grace Church, Emma had an idea. She took a notebook paper, her colored markers, and hid in the bathroom to write a little letter. She drew flowers and hearts around the words, writing with the still, shaky handwriting of childhood. "Hi, sir. I can't come there anymore, but I want you to know that I'm singing from here. I hope you're feeling better. Your friend, Emma." She folded the paper several times until it fit in the palm of her hand and hid it in the pocket of her flowery dress. Grandma Eleanor, adjusting her hat in front of the mirror, didn't notice her granddaughter's agitation. They walked down the street toward the church as they always did, passing by the hospital. It was part of the Sunday routine, a walk that Emma had always appreciated, but that now gained a special meaning. "Grandma, I need to use the bathroom," Emma lied when they passed in front of the hospital. "Just a minute." Grandma Eleanor, carrying the bag with the rosaries and the missal, looked at her granddaughter with suspicion. "Child, didn't you go before leaving? The church is right around the corner." "Please, Grandma, it's quick." Something in the girl's tone made Grandma Eleanor yield. She waited on the sidewalk, watching the movement of cars on the street, while Emma ran into the hospital. The girl now knew every corridor, every elevator, every corner of that place. That had become her second home. On the 4th floor, the corridor was busier than the other times. Nurses walked hurriedly, doctors talked in groups, and Emma had to hide behind a stretcher to avoid being seen. When she finally managed to reach Henry's room, she found the door ajar and a nurse checking the devices. "Sorry, dear, but you can't enter here," said the nurse, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "Are you looking for someone?" Emma held the paper firmly in her pocket. I wanted to leave something for the sir. The nurse, whose name was Karen and who had worked at that hospital for more than 20 years, noticed something special in the girl. She had heard other staff members comment about a child who had been appearing at the hospital, but never imagined it would be someone so small and determined. What thing, my child? Emma took the paper from her pocket and handed it to the nurse. It's a little letter. I sang for him the other day and wanted him to know that I'm still thinking of him. Karen took the paper and looked at the girl with a mixture of tenderness and concern. Are you the girl who sang for Mr. Henry? Emma nodded, surprised that someone knew of her existence. Do you know him? Yes, I do, and I can tell you that he has improved since you sang for him. The doctors don't quite understand what's happening, but his vital signs are more stable. Emma's heart raced. Her songs were really helping. Grandma Eleanor always said that music had special powers, but hearing it from an adult, from someone who worked at the hospital, made the girl feel as if she were a little fairy capable of miracles. Can I sing for him again? Asked Emma, with eyes shining with hope. Karen looked around, making sure no one was watching. Just today, okay? And very quietly. Emma entered the room on tiptoe. Henry was in the same position, but something about him seemed different. The expression on his face was more serene, less tense. The girl approached the bed, placed the letter under the pillow, and began to sing a new song, one she had learned from her grandmother the week before. When life seems heavy, when the heart is tired, remember there is always a road, an illuminated path. Luke, who had arrived early that Sunday, heard the voice coming from his father's room. He ran down the corridor, but when he reached the door, he found only Karen adjusting the sheets on the bed. Nurse, was there a child here just now? Karen hesitated. She had known Luke for years, knew he was a good man, but also knew that the hospital rules were strict. Mr. Luke, please tell me. I heard a voice singing. A girl came here. She left a little letter for your father and sang for him. I've never seen anything like it, Mr. Luke. While she was singing, Mr. Henry's heartbeats completely normalized. Luke felt a tightness in his chest. Has she left already? Just left. A small girl with curly hair and yellow ribbon. Luke ran to the corridor window, which overlooked the street. Down below, he saw an elderly woman talking to a girl who exactly matched the description. The woman seemed to be reprimanding the child, but without much conviction. Then the two walked toward the church on the corner. Returning to the room, Luke found the letter under the pillow. He read each word carefully, observing the colorful drawings that decorated the paper. Emma, he murmured, finally knowing the name of the girl who had brought a new light to that somber place. That afternoon, after church, Emma was quieter than normal. Grandma Eleanor, observing her granddaughter, realized that something had happened during the little stop at the hospital. During lunch, she got Emma to confess once more her small transgression. Child, you can't continue doing this. What if someone from the hospital complains? What if they discover where we live? But Grandma, the nurse, said he is improving. Because of my songs, protested Emma. She said that the doctors don't understand, but he's getting better. Grandma Eleanor stopped eating and looked fixedly at her granddaughter. There was something in the girl's voice that reminded her of her own daughter, Emma's mother, who also believed in the power of music to heal invisible wounds. Maybe it was true. Maybe Emma had inherited not only the voice but also the gift of her mother. All right, she finally said. But if we go together. And just once a week. Emma jumped from the chair and hugged her grandmother with such force that she almost knocked her down. Thank you, Grandma. I knew you would understand. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Luke stayed longer than usual beside his father. He told him about the letter, about the girl named Emma, about the strange feeling of hope that had taken hold of his heart. For the first time in years, he held his father's hand and whispered, Dad, if you can hear me, know that someone very special is taking care of you, a girl who believes in the power of music. And you know what? I'm starting to believe, too. Henry, somewhere between sleep and wakefulness, seemed to respond. His fingers moved slightly, almost imperceptibly, but enough for Luke to notice. The son's heart filled with a hope he hadn't felt in a long time. That night, from their respective homes, Emma and Luke looked at the illuminated hospital in the distance. She, from her bedroom window, whispered a lullaby for the wind to carry. He, from the balcony of his apartment, felt a peace he had forgotten existed. And at the hospital, Henry slept with a more serene expression, as if he had finally found a reason to fight. The following week brought a new routine for Emma and Grandma Eleanor. Every Wednesday after lunch, the two walked to St. Mary's Hospital. Emma carried her little toy guitar and a small bag with drawings she made during the week to leave in Henry's room. Grandma Eleanor, although still wary, had begun to realize that these visits did immense good for her granddaughter. Karen, the nurse, had become a precious ally. She made sure Emma could enter the room during the quietest moments, when there was less movement in the corridor. The girl was already known by some staff members, who affectionately called her the Little Singer. On the third Wednesday, something different happened. Emma was singing her favorite song when she noticed that Henry slightly opened his eyes. It wasn't for long, just a few seconds, but enough for her to be sure that he had seen her. "Sir," she whispered, interrupting the song, "you're waking up." Henry tried to speak, but only a hoarse sound came from his throat. His eyes, still cloudy, searched for the girl's face, as if trying to understand where that angelic voice came from that had accompanied him for weeks. Emma gently held his hand. "You don't need to speak, sir. I'll continue singing for you to get better." At that moment, Luke entered the room. He had decided to change his visiting hours to coincide with the girls because he wanted to personally meet the child who was causing such a profound transformation in his father. "Emma," he said, making the girl turn in surprise. "How do you know my name?" she asked without letting go of Henry's hand. Luke smiled, a genuine smile that he hadn't displayed on his face for a long time. "I read your letter. My name is Luke, and this is my father, Henry." Emma looked from Luke to Henry, trying to understand the connection. "Oh, so that's why you're always around here. I saw you in the corridor, but I thought you were a doctor." "No, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a son who was losing hope until you appeared." Luke's words deeply touched Emma. She had never thought that her songs could mean so much to an entire family. "I just wanted to help. My grandma always said that music can heal hearts." "Your grandmother is a very wise woman," said Luke, sitting in the chair next to the bed. "May I ask where you live? I'd like to meet her and thank you for everything you've done." Emma hesitated. Grandma Eleanor had always taught her not to give personal information to strangers, but there was something about Luke that made her feel safe. "We live up there in the green building. You can see the hospital from our window." "What a wonderful coincidence," murmured Luke. "You live so close, and my father had the luck to receive your visits." Henry, who had been listening to the conversation, with his eyes half closed, lightly squeezed Emma's hand. It was a small gesture, but loaded with meaning. The girl smiled and began to sing again, this time a song that her mother used to sing. "There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always a hand to guide us. When everything seems impossible, just know where to look." Luke observed the scene with teary eyes. For years he hadn't seen his father show any kind of emotional response. The doctors had said that the chances of recovery were minimal, that it would be best to prepare for the worst. But there was the proof that there was still hope. When Emma finished singing, Henry managed to whisper a single word. "Thank you." The girl almost shouted with joy. He spoke to me." Luke got up quickly and pressed the button to call the nurse. Karen arrived running, followed by a doctor who was passing through the corridor. "Doctor, my father just spoke," said Luke, moved. The doctor, Dr. Anthony Rivers, examined Henry carefully. He checked his reflexes, tested his reactions, and shook his head in disbelief. "This is extraordinary, Mr. Luke. Last week's exams showed no sign of neurological improvement. I'll request new exams immediately." Emma, who had stepped back to give space to the adults, observed everything with a racing heart. Could it be possible that her songs were really helping Mr. Henry to improve? "Doctor," interrupted Karen, "may I speak with you privately?" The two moved away to the corridor, and Emma could hear the nurse explaining about the girl's visits, and how they seemed to coincide with Henry's improvements. When they returned, the doctor looked at Emma with curiosity. "So, you're the famous singer everyone is talking about?" Emma blushed. "I just sing for him to get better, doctor." "Well, continue singing, my child. I can't explain scientifically what's happening, but it's undeniable that there's a correlation between your visits and the patient's improvement." At that moment, Grandma Eleanor appeared at the door of the room. She had stayed in the waiting room, but her granddaughter's delay had left her worried. "Emma, what's happening here? What's happening?" she asked, observing the movement in the room. Luke approached the lady. "You must be Emma's grandmother. My name is Luke Anderson, and this is my father, Henry. I'd like to talk with you." Grandma Eleanor looked suspiciously at the well-dressed man. "Talk about what?" "About the miracle your granddaughter is performing in my father's life, about how I can thank you for everything you've done." Emma ran to her grandmother and hugged her. "Grandma, the sir spoke to me. He said thank you when I finished singing." Grandma Eleanor looked at Henry, who now kept his eyes open and seemed more conscious. She felt a shiver down her spine, remembering her daughter's words about the power of music. "My granddaughter has a special gift," she said proudly. "She inherited from her mother the ability to touch hearts with her voice." "May I ask what her mother was like?" asked Luke, curious. Grandma Eleanor hesitated, but something in the man's sincerity made her respond. "She left us when Emma was only 2 years old. She also sang for people who needed comfort. She said it was her mission in life." Luke felt a tightness in his chest. He began to understand that Emma wasn't just a curious child, but someone who carried a special heritage, a purpose that went beyond her age. "I'd like to invite you for coffee," he said. "There's a lot I'd like to talk about with you." Emma looked at her grandmother with pleading eyes. "Can we, Grandma? Mr. Luke is the son of the sir I sing for." Grandma Eleanor nodded slowly. "Just a coffee. But Emma, you need to promise that you'll continue being a normal girl, right? Don't think you're too special." "But Grandma, I think she is special," said Luke, smiling. "Very special." Henry, who had been observing the entire conversation, managed to articulate a few more words. "Girl's angel, thank you." Emma approached the bed and kissed the gentleman's forehead. "I'll come back next week to sing more, okay?" Henry smiled. For the first time in months, a weak smile, but a true one. And at that moment, everyone in the room knew that something extraordinary was happening, something that not even the most advanced medicine could completely explain. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The afternoon coffee at Mr. Richard's confectionery transformed into something much bigger than Luke had imagined. Emma, excited by the novelty of sitting at a restaurant table with an adult who wasn't family, chattered non-stop about her songs, her drawings and her little girl dreams. "And then I make up the songs in my head," she explained, gesturing with her small hands. "Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with a new melody, and I have to hum softly so I don't wake Grandma." Grandma Eleanor, initially reserved, began to open up as she perceived Luke's genuine interest in the family's story. "Emma has always been a special child," she told him, stirring sugar in her coffee. "Since she was little, when she cried, all it took was someone humming and she would calm down immediately." Luke listened attentively to every word, fascinated by the simplicity and depth of these two women. His life had always been surrounded by luxury, business, and social commitments, but nothing had given him as much peace as that sincere conversation in a simple confectionery. "May I ask about Emma's mother?" he said delicately. Grandma Eleanor sighed deeply. "My daughter Lucy was a singer, you know. Not famous, but she sang in churches, in hospitals, in nursing homes. She said that God had given her a voice to comfort the afflicted." Emma stopped playing with the napkin and looked at her grandmother. "Did Mom sing like me?" "Just like you, my child. You inherited not only her voice, but also her heart." Luke perceived that there was an unspoken pain in that conversation. "Lucy still is no longer with us," interrupted Grandma Eleanor gently. "She left when Emma was 2 years old. It was on a trip to sing in a small town. The The lady couldn't finish the sentence, and Luke immediately understood that he shouldn't insist on the subject. Emma, who had stopped chewing the sugar, bread, approached her grandmother and hugged her. "Grandma, you don't have to be sad. Mum continues singing from heaven, remember? You always told me that." Grandma Eleanor smiled through tears. "It's true, my child, and I think she's very proud of you." Luke felt deeply touched by the girl's emotional maturity. At 8 years old, Emma demonstrated a sensitivity and wisdom that many adults didn't possess. "Mr. Luke," said Emma, changing the subject with the typical ease of children, "why don't you live with your father?" The question caught Luke off guard. "Well, Emma, adults sometimes live alone. I have my apartment, my work. But he must be lonely," she insisted. "When I grow up, I'll always live with Grandma. I don't want her to be alone." Luke looked at Grandma Eleanor, who smiled proudly at her granddaughter. "You're right, Emma. Maybe I've distanced myself too much from my father." "It's never too late to get closer," said Grandma Eleanor wisely, "especially now that he's improving." The conversation was interrupted by the ring of Luke's cell phone. It was from the hospital. "Excuse me," he said, answering quickly. "Mr. Luke, this is Nurse Karen. Can you come to the hospital? Your father is asking to speak with you." Luke stood up immediately. "Of course I'm coming. Is he okay?" "He's fine. Sir, in fact, he's very well. He managed to sit up in bed and is speaking complete sentences." "We're going with you," said Emma before Luke could respond. "Emma, we can't just rush off like that," reprimanded Grandma Eleanor. "On the contrary," said Luke, "I'd very much like you to come with me. I'm sure my father would like to thank you personally." The path to the hospital was made in tense silence. Emma held her grandmother's hand, concerned about what she might find. Luke drove quickly but carefully, his heart racing with the possibility of having a real conversation with his father for the first time in months. When they arrived at the room, they found Henry sitting in bed with an alert expression they hadn't seen for a long time. Dr. Rivers was beside him, making notes on his clipboard. "Dad!" exclaimed Luke, approaching quickly. Henry smiled, a weak but genuine smile. "Luke, my son, I'm glad you came. How do you feel?" "The doctors said that—" "I feel awake," said Henry with effort, "as if I had slept a very long sleep and finally managed to open my eyes." Emma approached timidly. "Hi, Mr. Henry, I'm Emma." Henry looked at the girl with an expression of profound gratitude. "Emma, the girl who sang for me. I heard your voice even when everything was dark." "Really?" she asked with shining eyes. "Really. Your voice was like a rope pulling me back home." Dr. Rivers interrupted the conversation. "Mr. Luke, I need to speak with you. The exams show an extraordinary neurological recovery. I can't explain it medically." "I can explain it," said Henry with difficulty. "This girl, she has something special. Her voice reached where medicine couldn't." Grandma Eleanor approached the bed. "Mr. Henry, my name is Eleanor. I'm Emma's grandmother." Henry took the lady's hand. "Thank you. Thank you for letting your granddaughter take care of me." "She inherited from her mother this gift of touching hearts," explained Grandma Eleanor. "I always knew that one day it would be important." Emma, who had been quiet observing the adults, approached the bed. "Mr. Henry, do you want me to sing something?" "I'd love that, my child." Emma began to sing a new song, one she had created that very morning. When the sun rose today, it brought new hope. When the heart awoke, it discovered it still dreams. As she sang, something extraordinary happened. Henry began to cry, silent tears that seemed to wash away years of pain and distance. Luke, seeing his father cry for the first time since he was a child, approached and held his hand. "Dad, I'm—" "Sorry," whispered Luke. "I'm sorry for having distanced myself." Henry squeezed his son's hand. "No, Luke, it's not your fault. I lost myself in business and forgot what really mattered." Dr. Rivers, who observed the scene, shook his head, impressed. "In 20 years of medicine, I've never seen anything like this. Mr. Henry, if the recovery continues at this pace, you may be discharged in a few weeks." "Doctor," said Henry, "I want you to note in my chart that my recovery is due to medicine and to an 8-year-old angel who believes in the power of music. Emma blushed. I'm not an angel, Mr. Henry. I'm just a girl who likes to sing. Sometimes, said Henry, angels disguise themselves as girls who like to sing. At that moment, everyone in the room felt they were experiencing something that would change their lives forever. A connection had formed between those people, a family chosen by destiny and united by music. When they left the hospital, the sun was already setting, painting Denver's sky with shades of orange and pink. Emma walked between Luke and Grandma, Eleanor holding both their hands, feeling part of something greater than herself. Mr. Luke, she said, now that your father is better, will you live together? Luke looked at the girl and then at the hospital behind them. You know, Emma, I think so. I think it's time we become a real family again. 2 weeks later, Henry was being discharged from the hospital. The recovery had been so rapid and complete that it became the subject of study at the hospital. Dr. Rivers had invited colleagues from other hospitals to follow the case, referring to it as the miracle of music. Emma had become a daily visitor at the hospital during those last days. She always arrived in the late afternoon, accompanied by Grandma Eleanor, carrying her little guitar and a new song created especially to help in Henry's recovery. The girl was already known by all the staff, who received her with smiles and affection. Today is the last day I'll sing for you here, said Emma, sitting in the chair that had become hers, next to the bed where Henry now remained seated most of the time. But it won't be the last day you'll sing for me, responded Henry, with a voice that grew stronger each day. Luke told me that you live nearby. I hope we can continue being friends. Emma smiled. Of course, and when you're at home I can sing in the yard for you to hear from the window. Luke, who had spent practically every day at the hospital, observed the interaction between his father and Emma with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. The girl had managed to do in a few weeks what he himself couldn't do in years. Reconnect Henry with life, with emotions, with the capacity to love. Dad, said Luke, I've already talked with the construction company. I'm going to sell my apartment and come back home. I want to take care of you during your recovery. Henry held his son's hand. Luke, you don't need to do this out of obligation. It's not obligation, Dad. It's choice. Emma taught me that family is for being together, especially in important moments. Grandma Eleanor, who had observed all that transformation, approached Henry. Mr. Henry, may I ask a question? Of course, Mrs. Eleanor. Do you remember anything from the time you were sleeping? Henry thought for a moment. I remember voices, I remember songs, and I remember a feeling of peace that came whenever Emma sang. It was as if someone was calling me back home. Emma looked at her grandmother with curiosity. Grandma, why did you ask that? Grandma Eleanor hesitated. There was something she needed to tell, something she had discovered a few weeks before, and didn't know how to reveal. Emma, my child, I need to tell you all something. The serious tone of the grandmother made everyone in the room pay attention. Luke approached, feeling that something important was about to be revealed. After I met you, continued Grandma Eleanor, I became curious about your family. I asked some people in the neighborhood, went to the library, looked in old newspapers. Mrs. Eleanor, interrupted Luke, you didn't have to. Yes, I did, she said firmly, because I discovered something that you need to know. Emma held her grandmother's hand. What was it, Grandma? Grandma Eleanor took a deep breath. I discovered that you already knew each other. Or rather, your families already knew each other. Henry frowned. What do you mean? 9 years ago, a bus coming from a small town had an accident on the highway. My daughter Lucy was on that bus. She was going to sing at a company party. For year-end celebration. Luke felt his heart accelerate. Dad, do you remember that party we organized for the construction company employees in Millbrook? Henry closed his eyes, trying to recall. Yes, we hired a singer to liven up the party. But she never arrived. Because my daughter died in the accident, continued Grandma Eleanor with a choked voice. She was going to sing at your company's party. The silence that followed was profound. Emma looked from one adult to another, trying to understand what that information meant. Mrs. Eleanor, said Luke, moved, I didn't know if we had known. No one is to blame, she interrupted, but I believe it wasn't a coincidence that Emma found you. I believe that my daughter somehow guided her granddaughter here to complete the mission she couldn't finish. Henry opened, his eyes now shining with tears. So Emma came to finish what her mother had started? Lucy always said that her mission was to bring comfort through music, explained Grandma Eleanor. She couldn't sing for you at the party, but her daughter managed to sing when you needed it most. Emma, who had been quiet, approached Henry. So, my mommy knew you. We didn't get to know each other personally, said Henry, but she was going to sing for our family, for our employees. She was going to bring joy to us. And Emma did exactly that, added Luke. She brought joy, hope, and healing to our family. Emma smiled, a mixture of sadness and pride stamped on her face. So I finished Mom's work? You did much. More than that, said Henry, hugging the girl. You saved 2 lives, mine and Luke's. You taught us to be a family again. Grandma Eleanor approached and joined the hug. My daughter always said that God had plans that we couldn't understand. Today I see that she was right. Luke also joined the hug, feeling that he finally understood the purpose of everything that had happened. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for bringing my father back. Thank you for teaching me what really matters in life. Karen, the nurse who had observed the scene from the door, approached with teary eyes. Excuse me for interrupting, but I need to say that in all my years at the hospital, I've never seen anything as beautiful as this. Karen, said Henry, you were also part of this miracle. Thank you for allowing Emma to sing for me. Sometimes, responded the nurse, we need to break some rules to allow miracles to happen. Emma released herself from the hug and looked at all the adults. Now that Mr. Henry is well, can I continue singing for other people who need it? Of course you can, said Grandma Eleanor. That's your gift, my child. You inherited it from your mother and should use it to help others. But not alone, said Luke. Now you have a larger family. We will help you spread your music wherever it's needed. Henry smiled, feeling more alive than he had felt in years. Emma, would you like to be my heart's granddaughter? The girl's eyes shone. Can I really? Of course you can. And Luke can be your heart's uncle. Emma gave a shout of joy and hugged first Henry, then Luke. Now I have a big family. And we have a daughter and granddaughter who taught us the true meaning of family, said Luke. At that moment, everyone felt they had been touched by something greater than themselves. A story that began with a curious girl and her angelic voice had transformed into a lesson about destiny, family, and the capacity of music to heal not only bodies, but also broken hearts. The sun was setting outside the hospital window, painting Denver's sky with golden colors, and in the room a new family was forming, united not by blood but by something much more powerful, the love and gratitude that are born when hearts meet at the right moment. 6 months later, the yard of the E. Anderson family home had transformed into the most beautiful setting in Denver. Luke had bought the house next to Grandma Eleanor and Emma's apartment, torn down the wall that separated the 2 properties, and created a large garden where the 2 families, now united, met every afternoon. Emma had grown not just in height, but in wisdom and confidence. Her curly hair now reached her shoulders, and she had received a real guitar, a gift from Henry on the day he left the hospital. The 8-year-old girl had become a small musician, creating songs that spoke directly to the heart. Grandma, said Emma, running to the kitchen where Grandma Eleanor was preparing lunch, today is a special day. Today we're going to the hospital to sing for all the patients. Grandma Eleanor smiled, observing her granddaughter who now radiated contagious joy. Yes, my child, and Mr. Henry is anxious to accompany you. The idea had emerged a few weeks ago when Dr. Rivers invited Emma to sing at the hospital as part of a music therapy program. The girl had accepted immediately, as long as she could bring her new family along. Henry entered the kitchen, walking without any difficulty, completely recovered. Good morning, my dears. Are you ready for our first official performance? Emma ran to hug him. Grandpa Henry, I'm nervous. What if I forget the lyrics to the songs? Impossible, he said, caressing the girl's hair. Your voice comes from the heart, and the heart never forgets what's important. Luke arrived soon after, carrying a bouquet of flowers. "For the stars of the show," he said, giving flowers to Emma and Grandma Eleanor. "Dad, are you ready for your debut as a musician?" Henry had started playing the harmonica, inspired by Emma's music. He discovered that at 60, he could still learn new things, especially when it came to accompanying his heart's granddaughter. "More ready than ever," he answered, showing the harmonica he always carried in his pocket. The walk to the hospital became a small stop at each corner. Neighbors waved, greeted the family, and some even asked Emma to sing something. The girl had become known in the neighborhood as the little singer who healed a family's heart. At the hospital, a surprise awaited them. Dr. Rivers had organized a small ceremony in the auditorium where patients who could leave their rooms, family members, and staff gathered to hear Emma sing. "Before we begin," said Dr. Rivers at the microphone, "I'd like to tell you an extraordinary story. A few months ago, an 8-year-old girl entered this hospital with only her voice and her heart. She didn't know that she was about to perform the greatest miracle we've ever witnessed here." Emma, sitting in the front row next to her family, blushed but smiled proudly. "This girl," continued the doctor, "taught us that medicine cures the body, but music cures the soul. Today she returns not as a visitor, but as our ambassador of hope." Applause filled the auditorium. Emma stood up, took her guitar, and walked to the small stage set up especially for her. "Hi, everyone," she said into the microphone with a naturalness that surprised everyone. "My name is Emma and I came to sing for you. But before that, I want to tell you something. A few months ago, I thought my voice was too small to make a difference. Today, I know that it's not the size of the voice that matters. It's the size of the love you put into it." Henry, sitting in the front row, wiped away a tear. In a few months, that girl had become the greatest teacher of his life. Emma began to sing her first song, one she had created especially for that day. "There's always a light that shines even when everything is dark. There's always a voice that calls even when the path is hard. You don't need to be big to be important. You don't need to be strong to be constant. You just need to be true. You just need to be sincere, and your heart will find the right path." Emma's voice, now more mature and confident, filled the auditorium. Some patients cried, others smiled, but all felt they were witnessing something magical. Luke, observing the scene, remembered the day he first heard that voice in the hospital corridor. At that moment he was a lost man, distant from everything that really mattered. Today he was a son, a heart's brother, a member of a family that had found itself through music. Grandma Eleanor, proud of her granddaughter, thought of her daughter, Lucy. She knew she was present at that moment, smiling from heaven, seeing that her mission had been fulfilled through little Emma. Emma sang 5 songs, each created for a different moment in life, for when we are sad, for when we need hope, for when we want to thank, for when we want to love, and for when we want to remember that we are special. For the last song, Henry went up on stage and accompanied his granddaughter with his harmonica. The combination of Emma's angelic voice with the melancholic sound of the instrument created a melody that no one in the auditorium would ever forget. "Thank you," said Emma at the end, "for letting me sing for you. Remember, you are important, you are loved, and there is always a song waiting to be sung in your hearts." The applause was long and emotional. Patients in wheelchairs, concerned family members, doctors and nurses all stood up to applaud not just Emma, but the lesson she had given everyone about the importance of music, family, and love. After the performance, Emma was congratulated by dozens of people. Children asked for autographs, adults thanked her for the songs, and some even asked when her next performance would be. "Grandpa Henry," said Emma as they walked back home, "today I understood something important." "What was that, my child?" "I understood that my voice isn't just mine. It's Mom's too, it's yours, it's Uncle Luke's, it's Grandma Eleanor's, it's all those who love me. When I sing, all of you sing with me." Henry stopped walking and hugged Emma. "You're the wisest person I know, did you know that?" "I'm not wise," she answered. "I just learned that love makes us grow inside." That night, the two families gathered. in the yard for a special dinner. Under the stars of Denver, with St. Mary's Hospital shining in the distance, Emma sang once more, now just for her family. Luke observed his father, who smiled as he hadn't smiled in years. He observed Grandma Eleanor, who had gained not only new grandchildren, but a new reason to live. And he observed Emma, the girl who had entered their lives like an angel and had become the center of a family that destiny had united. "Thank you, Mom," whispered Emma, looking at the starry sky, "for teaching me that music can heal anything." And at that moment, everyone knew that they had lived a story that would forever change the way they saw life, family, and the transformative power of love expressed through music. Little Emma, who one day believed that her voice could reach people that no one else could touch, had discovered that her voice not only reached hearts but healed them, transformed them, and taught them to love again. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Emma, Henry, Luke, and Grandma Eleanor has touched your hearts in the same way that Emma touched the heart of her new family. This is a story about the power of music, about the importance of family, and about how small gestures can create great miracles. To continue experiencing this emotional journey, we have prepared a special selection of equally inspiring stories. You can find them by clicking here on the side. If this story of love and healing moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique narratives that explore the beauty and complexity of human life, stories that remind us that there is always hope, there is always love, and there is always a song waiting to be sung in our hearts. Don't miss our next content and tell us in the comments how this story touched you.